Live.
Well, we want to welcome everybody to the Marine Mammal Center. I am Jennifer Bushman, and I have with me
Dr. Sean Johnson.
And we are going to talk today. I mean, it's World Oceans Day. And so we wanted to talk about all of the things that are happening here. And for those people that don't know about the Marine Mammal Center, we also have John Warner. And John is giving us the overall view of all of the work that's going on here right now with the animals. So, John, did you want to talk about this and come switch and talk to us about what the overview of the center, and then we'll get started, or should we just...
Sure. Sean, I'm going to hand this to you.
All right.
Just say later when that comes up. Okay.
And then here is...
I'm going to stand like this so that I don't have to wear this.
And here is John, and he's going to tell us all about the center. I'm on the board. John also has brought me as part of this, and the work that's happening here is so important. I mean, I think, John, the thing is that it affects so much of not just the oceans, but our food system, all sorts of things. So tell us about the center.
Yeah, so one, happy World Oceans Day, and thanks for inviting us into your Facebook screen today. We're at the Marine Mammal Center, which is located in Sausalito, California, just north of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. It's the largest marine mammal hospital in the world. Our mission is to advance global ocean conservation through marine mammal rescue, rehabilitation, science, research, and education. So we have a full focused mission that starts with the patients that you're seeing on your screen that are in these pens with pools. So these are all animals that have been rescued somewhere along the California coast. We have authorization from NOAA for 600 miles of the California coast, as well as Hawaii for the endangered Hawaiian monk seal. So you're seeing some of the animals in here, which we will go down further, closer to the animals, show you more up close and personal, and Dr. Sean will talk more specifically about the patients, why they're here, what their treatments are, what the timeline is for us to be able to release them. But that represents the rescue and rehabilitation work. So we've got about 100 staff that work for the Marine Mammal Center and 1,400 volunteers. So most, if not all, the work that we do here is because of volunteers. It's roughly around the equivalent of $5 million worth of labor per year that we are receiving through our great and wonderful volunteers. So we have this location here in Sausalito. We have a location in Monterey, and then a location near San Luis Obispo. Those two centers are triage centers. So we'll rescue animals, especially down in those areas. A good amount of the animals that we get on a yearly basis come from there. They're brought to those triage facilities. They are stabilized, given some food, a quick checkup, make sure that they can be transported the next day up here to the main hospital, where they go through an admit exam and then a personalized care protocol depending upon the issues that they face. I think Sean's going to talk to you a little bit more about malnutrition being one of the main causes for the patients to be at the center right here. That obviously relates very much to the work that Aquaria is doing, aquaculture in general, and the need for us to maintain and have our fish stocks thrive out there in our ocean environment. So another pillar of our work is education, very much focused on changing hearts, minds, and behaviors that are in service to a healthier ocean. We do that through the visitor experience. We're doing it virtually right now, but normally we'd have around 100,000 people come and visit our center on a yearly basis. We've got a program called Ocean Ambassadors. It's 5 years old now, and that is a middle school curriculum. It's a full year STEM-aligned curriculum for middle school students. Right now, we're at about 6,000 students in schools throughout the Bay Area participating in this program. It includes 2 field trips, bringing the students out here to the center, and then one that's usually on the bay through a ferry partner that we have, where the kids get to see the animals in a healthy environment after seeing them here at the hospital where they're sick. Our main goal is wild release. So everything we do is in service to getting the animals back out into their ocean home. And through the care and rescuing, we also do a lot of research, which I know I'll leave to Sean to talk more about. But every animal that comes in, every animal that survives, every animal that doesn't survive tells a story and is part of our research efforts to find out what the cause is, how to prevent those things that are bringing the animals in here, to learn more about the intersections of human health and animal health, of which domoic acid is a great example of one that is pretty consistently causing interruptions in our food chain supplies, especially when it comes to
crab season.
Crab etc., which I think crab season already was canceled this year. I think
Yeah.
because of it. Sean will confirm that. But it's a neurotoxin that affects our animals with seizures. Can sometimes get to be such a big problem that the survival rate is extremely low. We've got a few patients on site now that are suffering from domoic acid toxicity. I think the prognosis so far is pretty good for the ones that are here right now. It takes a lot of IV fluids, food, and rest. So with that, that's sort of an overview of what the center does, what we're focused on.
Let's
sort of relates, and then I think we can start talking about some individual patients and continue that mission story.
And continue it throughout. And tell us a little bit about the history of it. How did we get here?
Yeah, great question. As we walk down, do you want me to hold the phone so that's we're not playing the mask game? And then we'll all go downstairs, and then Sean will take over. So the center started 44 years ago, right, Sean? 44. Yeah, 44 years ago, and was the result of three really concerned citizens here in Marin County who were seeing increases in marine mammal stranding on the local beaches. This has a lot to do with the Marine Mammal Protection Act that was extremely successful in helping marine mammal populations rebound from pretty much near extinction in both our sea lion, elephant seal, and other species. The numbers now are pretty healthy, but back then, every time a marine mammal washed up, it was really important to see what was going on, get them back to health, and release them. So these three volunteers came and to this particular location, which was an old Nike missile silo site for the US military. It had been abandoned, and they sort of squatted and took it over. There were some dog kennels on the other side that aren't there anymore that were perfect for housing a marine mammal who then couldn't escape and run away. And they would feed them, do what they could back then to great success, and then release them back into the wild. And that's what started the Marine Mammal Center. So I'm going to hand this back to Jennifer.
Yes.
And I will take that from you, Sean.
So we've come down to the other side, and I'm going to hand the phone to Sean. That was kind of smart, right? If we had been walking out, we got our masks on. Let's go on through, and you can start to give us a sense of where we are and what we're doing.
Great.
Yeah, what are we looking at now?
Is that my phone?
No.
Okay.
No, I think it's oh, it is. Okay. Well, you know.
We're down here on the front row, the A row, and we, as John said, we are the largest marine mammal rehab center in the world, and that's based on the number of animals we care for every year, which is typically an average between 800 and 1,000 animals a year. So quite a few, and part of that is because we live in this amazing environment with this amazing ocean that supports so many marine mammals, with sea lions, elephant seals, and harbor seals as our primary patients here. But you'll see later today, we also have some of the endangered Guadalupe fur seals on site today. And often we'll have southern sea otters, which are endangered and endemic to the California coastline here. So really, as John mentioned, with the Marine Mammal Protection Act and us having a healthy ocean system, their mammal populations have rebounded from their prehistoric or pre-hunting days. And now we're learning so much about how these animals can tell us about the health of the ocean.
So let's talk about, because this is a call center. So how do we primarily hear about what's happening with the animals, and then for them to get to here? So maybe start from the beginning of the process, and then we'll,
Yeah. Well, through this door here is our vet offices and our response offices. And we have a stranding hotline, and we have a team of people that work in there, like a 911 call center, and they take calls from the public or from lifeguards or park rangers, and any marine mammal that washes up on a beach that looks like it needs help, they call us, all the way from Fort Bragg down to San Luis Obispo, over 600 miles of California coastline. And then we have teams that go out and assess the animals and make sure if they need any help, and we'll rescue them and bring them here to our facility. Eventually, they'll get here to our facility in Sausalito, and where they'll get a full veterinary exam. And we have 4 veterinarians and a whole bunch of veterinary technicians and other support staff and a laboratory. So we're a fully equipped vet hospital here, where we can provide like world-class care for marine mammals. So it's pretty amazing.
It is, and all of the research that goes on too. So the idea that it's a localized organization is really not the case. I mean, there are scientists that come from all over the world that learn about all of the different things that you find out that's really happening in our oceans through the eyes, through the bodies, really, of these marine mammals.
I mean, research is one of our core legs of our mission here. It isn't just that we want to help the individual animal, but we want to learn about the populations as a whole. And we learn so much about the ocean and ocean health through these marine mammals. You know, cancer being caused by pollutants, or
which is such a big deal. You would never have thought that now these animals are coming in with different types of cancer as a result of PCBs and other things.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, California sea lions have the highest prevalence of proportion of cancer of any wild species in the whole world, and that's I know, and our research has shown that's because the animals that have the cancer have higher levels of pollutants. They also have a viral infection, but we think that the pollutants are what allows that virus to allow the cancer to start. So it's very relevant to human health, ocean health, and the individual health of each one of these animals,
and the health of our food system. So we've got this call center here and some of your offices,
and that we get roughly 10 to 15,000 calls a year.
Wow.
That we
so
have
can
to.
you imagine 10 to 15,000 calls a year, and you go out?
We go out and look at the animals probably about 9,000 times, and we end up bringing in about 1,000 of those animals that we assess.
And during this time with Corona, I know that everything's been really well managed with the volunteers, but let's talk about, because people weren't out on the beaches, just really quickly, let's talk about who was finding the animals. There was a lot of concern about that during this time.
It was. We did have a decrease in the number of calls because there was less people on the beaches, but our partners at state parks and at the national parks, we're still out on the beaches patrolling, and we're still calling us and allowing us access to the beaches, even though the parking lots were closed. And we had to follow all the social distancing and guidelines to make sure that we weren't mixing too many people or interacting with the public, so that we were protecting our volunteers and our staff appropriately.
Makes sense. So now let's walk. Should we walk down this way?
Yeah.
We've got John here. So where are we going?
So we're the first pen that we're going to look at here that has animals in is this pen here, and these are some elfin seal pups that were born probably in February and March, and most of their cousins and kin were out at the ocean free feeding. They're all weaned, but this set here developed a parasitic infection, a lungworm infection, and probably prevented them from successfully surviving. And they stranded on the beaches. They weren't eating. They're very, very malnourished, and they're being treated for their lungworm. We can get up here a little bit closer. You can see them there, and you can see that they should be 3 times as big as they are here
for that age.
For this age, and they're being. This parasite, we can slowly treat it, and it takes a while for the body to clear it. And the immune reaction that I get from that is rather severe.
Tell me then explain to everyone how they're fed and what the care of them is as they're at this stage.
Well, we have a team of volunteers, animal care volunteers, that come in and feed them appropriately. These guys aren't eating yet, so they're being mostly tube fed.
Tube fed. So what is that process?
Well, that's we take herring. And
this is the part where I'm like, we're all about the food, but so we've got fish that's coming in.
Yeah, we get fish from sustainable fisheries.
MSC certified fisheries.
In Alaska, and we grind it up. We add some salmon oil.
So imagine a fish milkshake.
Yeah, and some water and electrolytes, some minerals, and then we put it in a big syringe, pass the tube down into the stomach of the animal, and then push the food in. And then pull the tube out, and that provides them the nourishment that they need while they're healing. And then when they get a little healthier and stronger, they'll start eating the herring themselves whole.
So do they have to learn how to eat? Is it a transition between the tube feeding to the whole fish feeding?
With the elfin seals, they're young, and they would learn this process in the wild, by trial and error, trying to catch different fish and how do you swallow, because they're moms.
Oh, this is the fish kitchen. So John's in the fish kitchen.
Yay. There's
He's
some
looking at the fish milkshakes.
That's the fish mash there.
Yeah, mash.
Yeah, fish milkshakes, and
I
and
have
all
been
the
in there
equipment.
cleaning the dishes
All
and,
the equipment.
and all of the equipment.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it takes a team of 10 to 20 people, of volunteers, to come in and do this every single day.
Mhm.
And animals get tube fed 3 to 4 times a day.
Give everyone a sense of how much fish do you go through in a day, just on average.
Oh.
I know you can't say when everything's full.
Well, when we are busy, we're using 1,000 pounds a day.
Can you imagine?
In March, April, May, we're definitely using 1,000 pounds of fish a day.
Yeah, it's just an incredible thing.
Yeah, and we use over 100,000 pounds of herring a year.
I mean, can you imagine what it takes just to keep this going? We were talking about this. I know I'm running a campaign to get donations for the Marine Mammal Center today. That's right. You want to?
Yeah. So this. Unfortunately, we don't. Our volunteers have already fed the animals for their afternoon feed, but I can show you that this is a stomach tube that we use, and we pass it down into their stomach, and you have to restrain the animals. But after they learn that they're being fed, they don't fight the stomach tube, and then we would fill these syringes up with the fish mash, and then just attach it to the stomach tube and push it down into their stomach, and then crimp it off and pull the tube out. And this is very, they can be very risky. If you accidentally got the tube down into the lungs, that you could put the food in the lungs. So it's our volunteers go through a lot of extensive training and practice and years of experience to be able to do this. But we can, if you have the right desire, we can take pretty much anyone off the streets to get them to feeding our young animals.
I think that's one of the most incredible things about the center is, so just in case you missed it, I mean, almost 1,500 volunteers, right? And 100,000 volunteer hours, right? A year. So just imagine what the value of that is in terms of needing to fundraise to have that dedicated as a staff. And some are very experienced with animals, and others, of course, are just learning, and you kind of bring them along.
We bring them in. There are opportunities to bring in, and we have some animal care volunteers who've been doing this for almost 30 years.
Isn't it? It's just extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
It really is. And you think about during Corona, these different cycles that you've had to put people on so that they come in and they're only in one shift with the
we've
same
had to
people.
do a lot of shifting of how we operate because of the restrictions and protecting our people and not mixing, because these animals can't get fed without our essential volunteers.
So where are we now?
A little bit. Let's go one more corridor here. So we're going down the corridor here, and we have raised pools along here. We have 24 pools. We have this amazing closed water system that recirculates the water and disinfects it with ozone. We don't use any chemicals like chlorine or bromine in our water. Really high-tech water system that we have here. We're so close to the ocean, you would think that we would have seawater, but we never connected us up here on the hill with the ocean, so we make our own seawater.
So they're talking to us now.
And so now we're in the middle of the corridor here, and we have some fur seals that you can see there that John is getting. And this is a northern fur seal pup that was going to be 1 year old in November, I guess. And it's missing its guard hairs. It's missing the hair, the long dark hairs, and that's why it looks blonde.
And what does that mean exactly? Why is it missing it? And
we're not really sure. Well, we see some animals that come in with them losing their hairs. They have 2 layers of hairs, the guard hairs, and then that inner keeps them warm.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes all their outside hairs, and we're not really sure why. We're always trying to get samples and try to understand if there's a disease process here or nutritional. I think some of it is probably nutritional. And then the other fur seal we have in the back there, the darker colored one, is a Guadalupe fur seal.
Very rare.
Yeah, there's only about 12,000 of them in the world, and they all live down in Mexico and breed down on Guadalupe Island. And then they forage off the coast of California and Washington here through the first 2 years of their life. So these little Guadalupes are weaned in June of last year. They're out here off the coast looking for food, and this time of year, the younger ones, for some reason, they start stranding on our beaches up here in California, and we're trying to study and try to understand why we've seen an increased number of the Guadalupe stranding recently.
Talk about the endangered species and the other ones that we serve as well.
So the Guadalupes are a threatened species and endangered in Mexico, different classifications, but they're very rare and they're really endemic of Mexico. The northern fur seal here, you rarely see them in California. The only there's a population out on the Channel Islands. There's a population on the Fair Lawns and a very large population up in Alaska on the Pribilof Islands. And they're pelagic. You would never see a fur seal like haul out a Pier 39 or something like that. And that's the great thing about all these different species. They tell us about different parts of the ocean. Right. You know, the sea otters are right along the coast, so if there's an issue with the environment there, we see problems with sea otters like toxoplasmosis or parasites. And if we're seeing problems way out in the deep pelagic, then we start seeing increased numbers of stranding of fur seals. So that could be with the fur seals, it's like the warm water, far off coast. You know, we might not feel it here, but if it's impacting the fish populations far off the shelf there, then the fur seals are going to have issues.
So much of this, when we talk about the fish population, which is part of what we're involved in with Quarry Arctic and trying to create this balance in the oceans and what's demanded as we see these fisheries move. So a lot of the fisheries move, right, because of the different temperatures in the ocean. And their instincts are going to be in one specific area, and then what happens when they can't find the fish that they need? Is that partly due to overfishing, but it's also climate change, right? And the warming of the ocean.
It's a combination of both, especially back in 2015, 2014, when we saw huge numbers of sea lions stranding, and with putting satellite tags on the females to understand why they weren't able to feed their pups and why the pups were stranding, we found that the increased ocean temperatures off of California here were dramatic. 5, 6, 7 degrees increase here. That pushed all the fish farther north, deeper down in the water, farther out of sea. But all the sea lion moms and their pups were on the Channel Islands, so they couldn't go far enough to find the fish. So they weren't eating enough food to produce milk and feed their pups. So then all the pups were desperate and dying and just basically jumping in the ocean and washing up on our beaches. And that corresponded, with when the ocean temperatures aren't optimal for the fish populations decline. And it showed that if you don't adjust the fishing pressure on those populations, then you're going to have overfishing too, because the fish can't rebound.
That's right. So all of these things also, are affected by consumption and the way in which we use these resources. Yeah. So I think that kind of that connection, right? Because people really feel a lot of connection when it comes to what their fish and seafood choices can be and what they buy and what they support, because all of that has an effect up the food chain.
Oh, all the way up.
Yeah. So
and unfortunately, sometimes the fisheries, as humans, we're not reactive enough to understand that the fisheries are declining because of the ocean conditions, and then we push the fisheries to too low a numbers that there isn't enough to share with the marine mammals.
I think that's our whole thing, is we have to leave enough to share.
Yeah.
So how long on average then, how long will they be here?
Most of our animals are here about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on if they're malnutrition. We feed them this high calorie herring. Yeah, and then when they hit healthy weight, release weight, then we'll take them out and release them here, just off the coast here. And all these species, even though we rescue from a very large area, all of them all migrate up and down, and we can release them. Most of them right here from Point Reyes, and they can find their way.
Oh, that's such good news. So how does that work?
The release? We'll do a release exam, make sure they're healthy with our veterinary staff, and they have enough weight where we feel comfortable that they have enough energy to make it to their feeding grounds and start foraging. And then we'll often either take them down here to Rodeo Beach, which is just right
here. That's so a lot of the releases go down there.
Or we'll drive them up to Point Reyes National Seashore and release them up in the national park there, where there's some beaches that are protected or have less traffic from people, and the animals can take time to assimilate from being fed 3 times a day to being released out in the wild.
But that's why you're so careful about human interaction. So I wanted to talk to you about this, because we didn't, I know that the volunteers come in obviously for their own safety and protecting the animals. So we should take a look at this, because we don't get to see them come in, but these boards are really super important.
That we use. predators, and these are wild animals. So even though they're small, they will try to protect themselves. They will bite you. So anytime we're interacting with the animals, we always have a protection between us and them, and protect ourselves, but also to create a barrier so that they don't become too habituated to us, and they understand that we're trying to not make friends with them. We don't talk around them. We don't talk to them.
Right.
And we keep our voices down. And we're really, our ultimate goal is to release them so that they'll be a successful part of the ecosystem. And over on this side, I don't know, John, if you showed, but these are the difference. This is a sea lion. These sea lions are pups that have been weaned along the coast here, and have had different issues that have caused them to strand, such as pneumonia, or one of them had a large abscess, some kind of infection. And amazingly, these sea lions are all born around June 15th every year, all together.
Right.
And so they're all going to have a birthday next week. So I'll protect John here. But so you can see that they're underweight as well. You'll notice that some of them have marks on them. Some and the elephant seals have little hat tags. And they have
talk about the hat tags. Talk about that.
The hat tags is something that was developed many years ago for our volunteers to identify the animals, because if you have to give one of them a medication, you have to know which is which. And if you have a bunch of them, they're all looking up at you.
It's hard to tell the difference.
To tell.
A mom with twins.
Yeah, they all look very similar. And so we've developed different ways to identify them. And most recently, we've come up with the hat tags that you'll see here a little bit farther. They're 3D printed, biodegradable.
And it's
resin.
Just a surgical glue, right?
It's just a surgical glue that goes on their hair.
And then when they're released, it comes.
When they're released and they molt in the fall, they'll this comes off and it'll biodegrade in the ocean. So,
oh my gosh! Every single thing. Thinking about all of those pieces.
It is. Yeah, we've gone through different. It's taken us a long time to get to this point to develop the best hat tag, but we're really always striving to be as eco-friendly as possible.
Well, of course, and everybody worries about that it hurts them, and it doesn't hurt them at all.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna walk down here and just see a group of elephant seals that are gonna be released. Some of them will be released on Thursday.
Yeah. So this is such a great kind of where they started versus what we're looking for them to be able to get to release.
Yeah, right in front of us there.
And see, we have everybody's here.
These are northern?
No, these are Guadalupe's. We only have the one northern on site right now. Some more Guadalupe's. This is our season for Guadalupe fur seals.
Everybody loves them. They look so sweet, and they can be very vicious.
They're very vicious.
Yes.
Our fur seals are very, they're little bundles of love.
Yeah, they'll love you to death.
Yeah. They will bite you as they have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one thing I wanted to ask you about, which is when someone sees one of these animals on the beach, you have a very specific training. It's a public service out there talking about what to do when you see an animal, because they can look cute.
They can look cute, and of course, when you see an animal that's on the beach and it's in distress, you want to help it. But even if they are wild animals, and we do a lot of training, we do public service announcements in the area to remind people that they're wild. They could have diseases that you could get, and to really keep your distance, take pictures, send us the photos. We'll get out with our team who have boards and gloves and are protected, and decide if that animal needs to be rescued or not. And so it's a really important part of our public service that we do to protect people and protect the animals.
That's right. But, well, and I mean, we've seen them come in, and humans certainly are also part of the problem, besides just what we're doing in the ocean. Gunshots. Some of them have been hurt or injured by humans as well. So can you talk about that a little bit?
That's you're correct. We see about 8 to 10% of our animals every year that have had some type of human interaction, such as gunshot, entanglement in fishing gear, or entanglement in trash, just ocean trash. They're playful animals. They like to play with things. We get toilet bowl lids stuck around their head, and, so you know, those are always really disheartening to see that when we see animals that are here because of actions taken by humans.
Yes.
And you know, we try to do our best to educate as many people as we can about not interacting with animals. Shooting at them is not the way to keep them away from your fishing gear.
Well, and that's one of the things that we've been concerned about as well is the explosives that sometimes the fishermen use.
Yeah,
Right, and that's some of that's legal.
Yeah,
Is that right?
there it is. There are fishermen are allowed to use certain devices to scare the animals away from their fishing nets when they're fishing. One of them is called a seal ball. It's like a big firecracker that they can toss out at the animals. And unfortunately, occasionally, and we don't know if it's purposely or not, but it's too close to the animal, and they it'll damage them. It'll explode in their face and burn them, pop their eyes out, cause really severe damage. Those are really
devastating. Yeah, and I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about. I know we're getting some great shots here. Maybe we finish here because we're getting ready to release these guys, and then I'll ask you about the whales.
Okay. Yeah. Well, these are some elfin seals here that you can see.
Hi guys.
That are just in here eating and enjoying their little their time here in our deep water pool. This is our what we would call a finishing pool, so they have to dive a little bit deeper to find their food.
The hat tags there,
the hat
obvious
tags,
now. You can see them.
The hat tags that we use, and I think 4 of these guys have reached release weight and will be released down on Rodeo Beach on Thursday.
And how big are they now?
Our minimum release weight is 50 kilos, so about 110 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
But
Size of Jen. Their release weight is the size of Jen.
Yeah. And they, they're fat. When they start eating, they can gain, 8 kilos in a week if we give them enough food.
Wow.
They're
and at this point, the food just gets thrown into the pool and.
Yeah. At this point, these animals are not being treated for any diseases. They're just being making sure that we give them enough food so they can develop enough fat and energy to survive out there on their own.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we can head down, and actually, as we walk down here, you'll see we're going to walk by our oil spill response area and our stranding response area. You'll see some of our trucks and vans.
Yeah, that's great.
Where we here, and actually one of our boats too.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic. So it's it's really amazing to me that all of the enter that this takes. In terms of all of the vehicles as well as the crates, everything. Some people recognize all the
crates and all the equipment it takes to rescue the animals safely and transport them with our trucks and our vans. Because we have 3 centers down in San Luis Obispo and Moss Landing, and so we're always transporting animals up and down the coast. And we also this is actually our oil spill response. Even though it doesn't look like it, but if there's a big oil spill, we're partners with the World Wildlife Care Network, and they would come and bring their transport equipment. Here, we can bring on birds and other animals here. Marine mammals would stay here for treatment, and other animals would go to the bird facility. So
amazing.
Where a lot of us are trained in casualty training and other cognitive
materials.
And I think John saw back there, but one of our boats is back there, and that's for our whale response. Right?
Yes, let's talk about that. Let's talk about entangled, and let's also talk about the whales that you find that are in distress and dying, and the necropsy process, because you're the only center in the world that does necropsies consistently from any of the whales that are found, correct?
Yeah, let's start with that. This past year, there was an unusual mortality event in the gray whales that migrate from Mexico to Alaska and back every year. And they go by every season. We have festivals and we celebrate. Last year, hundreds went from Mexico to Alaska, and we didn't really know why. Here, we're okay in the ocean. They were seen normal, but we were learning up in Alaska, the sea ice was melting so rapidly, and the conditions up there were changing so rapidly that the whales were unable to find enough food all summer long. So when they were migrating back down
They were
starving to death,
Yep.
or they would give birth to their calf in Mexico,
Couldn't get
but
back.
they couldn't make it back.
Mhm.
And here, just in our stranding area, right in the area, we had 12 gray whales that stranded, and we were able to perform complete necropsies on them, go out with our team and look and take samples and dive deep in and try to understand why they were dying. And almost all of them were malnourished, underweight. But what we found is half of them had also been struck by ships. And so what the theory is that they were malnourished, underweight. They came into San Francisco Bay to get out of the ocean, to be protected. Maybe some of them were kind of forage. Some of the they eat off the bottom.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. What do they eat? Because that's also a little bit confusing in terms of those fisheries we were talking about.
yeah. So gray, every marine mammal has its own niche. The gray whales eat all the copepods and the snails and the things that live in the mud.
Mhm.
So they
On the
scoop up
floor.
on the floors. They scoop up mud in their mouth and they squeeze out all the mud and they swallow everything. And they just do that for months in Alaska, and they get a lot of nutrition that way. So they're not eating fish per se.
But those trawls, like getting that things off of the ocean floor in addition to the fish, could damage that.
And then basically any type of climate change disrupts the whole ecosystem. So ice melting decreased the number of krill and other organisms that would lead to the causing these other snail populations to be robust, and so it's just a really complex system, and we see the outcomes of that with the marine mammals.
Mm-hmm. So the whales were coming in. You were doing the necropsies, and you were finding it was an issue about malnutrition.
Yeah,
malnutrition.
And we're ongoing studying. The whales are on their way or on the way to Alaska. We had a couple of them strand this spring here for malnutrition. Biologists in Mexico said that the calf production was really low this year. So they, the whales that did make it to Mexico didn't have calves because they were underweight. So we'll see what happens this fall when the whales that are in Alaska are heading
start
back.
to migrate again. And then what about we were talking about the entanglement and the work that you do around that.
Yeah, here at the Marine Mammal Center, and we work with our NOAA partners and other organizations to respond to entangled whales that are entangled mostly in fishing gear, mostly crab pots or other pot fisheries. And we saw a huge increase in the number of entangled whales in the last few years. And at first it was like, what's happening? Why are we seeing this increase in whales? And it went from like 10 to 12 in California a year to like 45. It was a huge number of increases. And what the science is showing is that with the ocean changes, the fish are moving, like we talked about, and the anchovies start to move into shore closer into where the crabfish.
Yeah, that huge anchovy school that came into the bay was one of the reasons why we saw so many whales. In the bay, right?
Because the whales are following their food,
and
their food brought them into danger, into risk with the crabfish, the fishing rod, and with the ships that are, have these shipping traffic here through the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a real big area here. So, the consequences of ocean change, climate change, you see them in these animals and animals that we're responding to. You would never predict that increased ocean temperature changes and upwelling changes in where the anchovies go will cause this endangered humpbacks to be entangled in fishing gears.
Every single thing is connected together, and I think that's the whole point of the work that's being done here. So if you can imagine, we're trying to help you kind of connect the dots with what happens at home, from the fish and seafood that you buy to even something as simple as a fishery moving, which it doesn't have to be a depleted fishery, but just the very fact that it moves and changes means that we're here dealing with a different issue. For example, the education about with some of those boaters that were in the bay that weren't used to obviously needing to watch out for them.
Yeah, we typically don't get large whales in the bay. We have harbor porpoises and a few bottlenose dolphins, but the sailing community, the boating community didn't know how to handle these large whales and what the rules were because they've never had to deal with it. So that's something that through our media team and PR team, we're working on developing guidelines to educate the boaters because it seems like the whales are back here now. They're coming back every season. There's some right here, right now in San Francisco Bay.
Yeah, and everybody gets so excited about seeing the whales, but really honoring where they are and what's going on. Like, for example, the big sailing events, you know, when we have the big sailing events in the bay, and teaching them as well on, because there were so many boats in the bay.
And that large sailing event that with the big catamarans, we were out observing, looking for whales, and we're keep filtering that information to the marine handlers, so that if a whale was at risk of potentially getting on the race course, that they could shut down the race course. And they did delay some of the racing because of whales. And this is something we didn't even have to worry about a few years ago.
No, that's exactly right.
Now
So
we're down here at our harbor seal hospital, and these are little harbor seal pups that were born in the last month or so.
Can you see them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they often come in at just a couple days old. You know, they'll get displaced from their mom.
Yeah, and explain why that happened.
Well, I mean, sometimes we don't know. They just end up washing up on the beach, and something happened to mom, or they got separated. Other times it could be human issues. You know, harbor seals will give birth pretty much anywhere they don't have real defined rookery areas, and or the waves can wash them out, and if it's kind of sometimes like a baby bird. If the pup gets on a really busy beach with lots of people, the mom won't come back for it. But often we'll put signs up and we'll watch them if they're really young and healthy. And sometimes at nighttime the pup goes, and so we assume that.
So you'll wait.
Yeah, we'll wait. Yeah. We'll assume that the mom came and retrieved the pup, and that
they're going out. And that's the other thing about the fisheries changing locations. It's a problem, right? Because if they have to go out further and further to fish, then they're going to be away from their pups for longer, and then there's the chance then that they're going to get separated.
Can you see this little guy by the fence?
We can.
Yes,
He's looking up at us. Yes.
And I feel like I love what they sound like. They're calling for their mom.
Their mom. They are. Mom. And it's not surprising that we have a separate group of volunteers here. A lot of them, we call them harbor seal moms. And a lot of them are neonatal nurses or work in the health profession. We treat these just like a neonate. They don't have an immune system when they come in here. We have to not let them get exposed to all the bacteria and other bugs that the topside animals may have. We change our clothes when we come down here. So for the first 4 weeks or so, they're very susceptible to disease and stress.
So I love it when they're calling out for their moms.
Should we go up to the picnic area by the ocean to
do our final? Yeah, let's do that. So one of the things, we're in this really beautiful location, and we talked about how it had been a missile silo, which here we are turning something good from something maybe that we're not so sure how good that was. We just want to say, actually, before we started, we had the fighters fly over. We had missiles to mammals.
Our Harbor Seal Hospital here that is the only original building on site. It was the command center for the 19 missile silo site that was built here in 40s.
But I mean, the infrastructure that's down below where all of the water filtration systems are is all from those tunnels. So this is such an important part of what's going on that I think we should to show it. Yep. So everyone, we just want to give a warning that there is a necropsy going on. Do we know of what?
I don't know, but
we'll find out. And so look away if it's something that would be upsetting to you. But this is because it's such a significantly important part of the work that's done here. And this is all of the science. Talk about the freezing of the samples, how you store things to compare year over year, all of that.
One of the most important aspects is we want to understand what's impacting these animals, and unfortunately, all of them that we rescue, and everyone that doesn't survive gets a necropsy or is an autopsy by our team of lab team and pathologists and veterinarians, and to first determine the cause of death. Second, to better understand, could we have done something differently or more to have treated them. And third was to collect samples for all the research projects that we have ongoing, about the out of 40 different projects where we collect samples for collaborative research projects. And we can get a little bit closer so we can see here.
Yeah.
Maybe all the sun, but is this
Sea lion? Juvenile sea lion. A pup.
That's great. So here is so here's Emily, our veterinary intern, who's doing a necropsy on a sea lion pup. And I don't know exactly why it died, but Emily is going to make a diagnosis and take some samples. And we have 9 ultra low freezers that get to -80 that stores all our samples. And
yeah, you can. Everybody can look back if you wanted to if you had turned away.
This is where we've made so many of our scientific breakthroughs, is through looking at our animals in the necropsy lab.
That's exactly right. And I think this is such an important part to understand, is that when you can compare year over year, as you see things like domoic acid outbreaks and consistency, then that's really where, when we talk about, you know, every day is Oceans Day and what's going on, we can start to give that history and be able to make suggestions on changes, on policy, and all of that. I mean, certainly with the wing from the win with NOAA, that becomes a significantly important part of it, when you can show that history and show when changes need to be made.
It's really, when we collect a sample, we don't always know what we're going to do with it, but then something happens and we want to have a baseline sample. We want to know what's changing, and we can go into our archives, we can go into our data, and we can help answer those questions. It's really amazing.
It's such an amazing part of it. And don't you also have hospitals worldwide then that are also asking for information? So it becomes an important resource too when something's happening with other areas of the world.
It does. And we have a very robust training program here, where we bring in veterinarians, veterinary students, technicians, people from zoos, where we train them how to collect samples, so that hopefully we're getting.
We should show what are we looking at here? Yeah, with the ghost monster, ghost net monster.
So this is a display that we have here to demonstrate some of the things that are impacting the marine mammals here in the ocean. This is nets that were removed from a stranded sperm whale. Over 400 pounds of netting, mostly fishing ghost nets, were consumed by this adult sperm whale, and it eventually clogged up its whole stomach and digestive system, and it died. And this is, you know, as the nets are floating around, they get a bunch of fish, and they have little ecosystems, and sometimes the whales will come up and just eat the whole system, which includes the net, but they also got some fish in it, and they can't digest it. They can't digest it or get it out, and it's really unfortunate. So this is an education display to really show the impact of why ghost nets are such a problem in the ocean, and how they can impact some of the most amazing animals.
That's right. It really, in that form, is very startling too. You see it all together, then hopefully you want to make significant change. And I noticed that, you know, he's all masked up too.
We're following all the guidelines here at the Marine Mammal Center.
Even with our elephant seal bronze. Very good.
Should we go up there?
I think we should. We want to maybe show you the view just really quickly, and show you looking over Rodeo Beach. And you'll see how important this entire region is, and why this ended up being based here, because it's such a stunning area. This is all closed right now. I think you just said, John, that they're looking at reopening. Next week.
This is part of we're lucky enough to have harvested from the military base that it used to be. So they keep it so safe. But it's a wonderful place to. And as we're leaving and then a lot of animals do get released right on that beach. I think 7 were released today, right, Sean? Right down there at Rodeo Beach here in the headlands.
And right before the crisis, Keanu Reeves was down there filming the next Matrix movie.
Yes.
We were very excited about that.
Jennifer was more excited.
I was very excited. I do. Because it was like, they made it all look like it was a foreign planet. I know. So let's, so Jeanette, if you want to pop back on with us, I know you, did we have any questions? Can you tell us if we did? And And if not, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no questions so far, but I'm sure some will come up. And if they do, we'll be sure to direct them to you guys at the Marine Mammal Center.
Amazing. So first and foremost, it costs a lot to feed the animals. So where can they go to be able to make a donation if they're so inspired?
Well, you could text Ocean to 41444. I think it's on our sign right there.
Yeah.
Or our website, which is marinemammalcenter.com.
And you, of course, can look up all of the different Earth Day Eats campaign. We've had a lot to talk about in terms of how Quare's role, like Quare Arctic's role is in preserving all of these wild resources and the balance of what's needed for our animals as well as for humans. And thank you so much too for coming and joining us. We really appreciate everyone being out here. It's a beautiful day and it's just great to spend it with you. So thank you so much.
And thank you. And thank you to everything you're doing in terms of creating sustainable fishing systems that will allow us to heal these oceans and heal the living creatures in it. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing at Aquarium.
Hope to get up
more a part of it.
and hopefully I'll get up there to the Arctic Circle and check it out, right? We're gunning for that. Well, thank you all very much for joining us. Remember, follow Seafood Watch, look for sustainable seafood, both the way it's reared, the way it's harvested. And every time you make that choice, you can remember these beautiful animals. They're going to appreciate all of your effort to make sure there's enough left in the ocean for their dinner too. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.